The world is full of ghosts, not of spirits but of moments, frozen frames of time captured and forgotten. They exist in the quiet hum of a server, in the endless scroll of a digital map. They are stories waiting for a witness. November 7th, 1997, Wellington, Florida. William Molt leaves a nightclub. He is 40 years old. He calls his girlfriend around 9:30 p.m., says he'll be home soon. He is never seen again. He vanishes from the face of the earth. Police search. Family members plead. Leads run cold. For 22 years, William Molt is a memory, a question mark suspended in time. His car, a ghost. His fate, an unanswered echo. But the eye that would find him was already watching. Years later, a satellite, orbiting silently hundreds of miles above the Earth, would pass over this exact spot. It would take a picture, a single, high-resolution photograph, just one of billions captured to build a map of the world. In that photograph, a secret lay submerged, hidden in plain sight. For years, anyone with a computer could have seen it, a faint outline, the ghost of a car at the bottom of a pond, a two-decade-old mystery, waiting for someone to simply look closer. Because in the modern world, nothing is ever truly lost. It's just archived, waiting for the right set of eyes to unlock a story that the water and time had tried to keep. To understand how a man can be lost for 2 decades, you have to go back to a world before the map was in everyone's pocket. A time before GPS was a household term. The world in 1997 was, in many ways, a larger place, full of undigitized corners and dark roads. William Bill Molt was a 40-year-old mortgage broker living in Palm Beach County, Florida. By all accounts, he was a man of routine, quiet, independent. He wasn't prone to sudden trips or erratic behavior. He was a man you could set your watch by. On the night of November 7th, 1997, he decided to go out. He drove his 1994 Saturn SL to the Adult Entertainment Bureau, a nightclub in nearby Lantana. Witnesses later told police he kept to himself. He wasn't a heavy drinker, but he had a couple of drinks over several hours. He didn't seem agitated or distressed. He was just there. At approximately 9:30 p.m., he called his girlfriend from the club. It was a normal call. He told her he would be leaving soon and would be home shortly. Around 11 p.m., he walked out of the club alone, got into his Saturn and drove off into the night. That was the last confirmed sighting of William Molt. When he didn't arrive home, his girlfriend reported him missing. The Lantana Police Department opened an investigation. They interviewed club patrons, traced his potential routes home, checked with friends and family. There was nothing. No sign of a struggle, no suspicious financial activity, no indication he had planned to leave. William Molt and his vehicle had simply vanished. There was one critical detail about the landscape of 1997. The area around his home in Wellington was booming. What are now pristine, gated communities were then sprawling construction sites. The Grand Isles, the very neighborhood where his car would one day be found, was in its infancy. In the dark, its roads were a confusing labyrinth of dirt paths and sudden dead ends. A wrong turn would not lead you to a programmed reroute. It would lead you into the dark. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into years. The investigation stalled. The family was left in a state of suspended grief. For 22 years, the case file for William Molt sat on a shelf, a silent monument to an ordinary man who drove off into the night and never came home. His story became a cold case, one of thousands across the country where the trail had gone completely, impossibly cold. 9 years later, and 1,000 miles north, another family would begin a similar, agonizing wait. The circumstances were different, but the silence that followed was the same. Davy Lee Niles was 72 years old. He lived in Byron Township, Michigan. He was a husband, a father, and a grandfather. But in the fall of 2006, he was a man in pain. He was suffering from cancer. His health was failing, and with it, his spirits. His family knew he was struggling with severe depression.
On October 11, 2006, Davy went to meet a friend at Jake's bar. It was a familiar place. But while there, his mood seemed to shift. For reasons no one ever understood, he got up and left abruptly. He walked out the door, got into his light brown Saturn, and drove away. His family's concern was immediate. This wasn't like the Molt case, a sudden and inexplicable disappearance. This was the disappearance of a vulnerable man. They feared the worst. The Kent County Sheriff's Office was contacted, and a search began almost immediately. Friends and family canvassed the area, putting up flyers, searching parks and remote roads. They searched for days, then weeks, but they found nothing. No car, no note, no trace. Davy Lee Niles was gone. For his family, the uncertainty was its own form of torment. They believed he may have chosen to end his own life, but without knowing for sure, there could be no true peace. 5 years after he vanished, his family made a difficult decision. They held a memorial service. They published his obituary. In their hearts, they had to let him go. But the question remained, where was he? Like William Molt, his final moments were a mystery. His car had become his coffin, hidden somewhere in the landscape of western Michigan. 2 men, 2 cars, 2 families left behind. Both cases were frozen in time, waiting for a new kind of witness to emerge from the sky, a witness that could see what everyone on the ground had missed. The cases of William Molt and Davy Lee Niles were passive mysteries, men lost to time, found by accident. But as technology evolved, its role in criminal justice became more active. The digital ghost wasn't just an archivist of the past. It was becoming a real-time witness to the present. It would not just find the missing. It would help hunt the guilty. May of 2018, Nassau County, Florida. It was the day before Mother's Day. For 34-year-old Jolene Cummings, it should have been a weekend of celebration. She was a hairstylist, a devoted mother to 3 young children. She was building a life for them, working hard at the Tangles hair salon in Yulee. On Saturday, May 12th, Jolene worked her shift. She was scheduled to pick up her children from her ex-husband that evening. She never arrived. The first calls were tinged with confusion, then concern. Jolene was reliable. This was not like her. When she didn't answer her phone, the concern escalated to alarm. The Nassau County Sheriff's Office was alerted. A missing persons report was filed. The search began. It didn't take long to find her vehicle, a beige 2006 Ford Expedition. It was parked outside a local Home Depot, but Jolene was not there. The first, chilling sign of foul play was the presence of her purse, left inside the car. Investigators immediately turned their attention to the last place she was seen, the salon. There, they focused on her co-worker, a woman who went by the name Jennifer Seibert. She was the last person known to have seen Jolene alive, but Jennifer Seibert was a ghost. Investigators would soon discover her real name was Kimberly Kessler, a woman with a history of using over a dozen different aliases and living in multiple states. The investigation quickly became a digital manhunt. Kessler was captured on surveillance video parking Jolene's Expedition in that Home Depot lot in the early hours of Sunday morning. Her own car, a black Kia Soul, was also spotted on cameras throughout the area. Police realized they were not just searching for a missing person. They were tracking a suspect who was actively trying to cover her tracks. The digital breadcrumbs, cell phone pings, CCTV footage, and soon, satellite images would become the only way to retrace the final, violent hours of Jolene Cummings' life. 5 years earlier, on the other side of the world, Italian investigators faced a different kind of mystery. Not a disappearance, but a discovery. The setting wasn't a bustling suburb, but a quiet, forgotten country lane. In February of 2013, near the small town of Seglia Messapica, a farmer was tending to his land. Beneath an olive tree, he found human remains. They were badly decomposed, clearly having been there for months exposed to the elements.
The Italian National Police, the Carabinieri, were called to the scene. The victim was identified through dental records as 46-year-old Davide Fervale. An autopsy revealed he had been shot. This was a homicide, but the investigators had almost nothing to work with. The remote location offered no obvious witnesses. The body had been there since at least October of the previous year. Evidence was scarce, degraded by time. They pursued theories of a financial dispute, a deal gone wrong, but every lead was a dead end. The killer had chosen the location well. It was a place where a secret could be kept, where a crime could seemingly be committed without anyone seeing. For months, the murder of Davide Fervale seemed destined to become another unsolved file. But someone, or something, had seen. Months before the body was found, a Google Street View car had driven down that very same country lane. Its nine-eyed camera was methodically capturing a panoramic image of the world. And in one of those frames, in a fleeting, accidental snapshot, it had captured the victim, alive, and standing right next to him. The human element in cold cases is paramount. The grief of families, the dedication of law enforcement, the chilling psychology of the perpetrators. But in these 4 cases, a new, silent witness emerged, a non-human entity capable of capturing and storing moments that human memory, or even direct observation, missed. This witness was the digital eye of Google Maps. For William Moult, Google Earth wasn't just a map, it was a time capsule. Its satellite imagery, taken years after his disappearance, held the key. The sheer scale of Google's mapping project meant that millions of square miles of the Earth's surface were cataloged. Most of these images are unremarkable, until they're not. In August 2019, a former resident of the Grand Isles was casually browsing Google Earth. He was looking at his old neighborhood. As he zoomed in on the retention pond behind a housing complex, he saw it. A dark, anomalous shape in the water. It was distinct, rectangular, and it looked exactly like a car. He contacted the current resident, who then used a drone to confirm the observation. The police were called. In August 2019, a former resident of the Grand Isles was casually browsing Google Earth. He was looking at his old neighborhood. As he zoomed in on the retention pond behind a housing complex, he saw it. A dark, anomalous shape in the water. It was distinct, rectangular, and it looked exactly like a car. He contacted the current resident, who then used a drone to confirm the observation. The police were called. A similar digital revelation occurred for Davy Lee Niles. For 5 years, his family searched the area around Jake's bar. They knew he was struggling. They feared a suicide. But the landscape held its secret close. It was a thicket of trees and shallow ponds, easily overlooked from ground level. In 2015, another casual Google Earth user, scanning the area around Byron Center, spotted something peculiar. In a small pond, just off 84th Street, partially obscured by trees, was a car. The image had been there since 2010. For 5 years, his car had been visible to anyone who knew where to look. It was directly across the street from the Cook Funeral Home, the very place where his family had held his memorial service years earlier. The Kent County Sheriff's Office was alerted. On October 9, 2015, divers confirmed the discovery. A heavily corroded light brown Saturn was pulled from the water. Inside, human remains were found. Dental records confirmed them to be Davy Lee Niles. The vehicle was facing the wrong way, as if he had driven into the pond and gotten stuck. The dense brush had made it invisible from the road, but the camera in the sky had no such limitations. The final 2 cases move beyond passive observation. They showcase the active, almost real-time investigative power of Google's various mapping tools, not just from above, but from the ground. Google Street View, a project to photograph every public road, inadvertently became a crime scene photographer. For Davide Fervali's murder in Italy, the Street View car passed through Ceglie Messapica in October 2012. It was months before his body was found. The image showed Fervali standing on a remote country lane, just off a small white Fiat Uno, and standing next to him, clear enough to be identifiable, was a man, his killer. The anonymous robotic eye had captured the very moment, or close it, of a murder about to happen. This digital timestamp and visual evidence provided the Carabinieri with an unprecedented break. It gave them not just a witness, but a clear, verifiable image of the victim alive with his eventual murderer. It would become a cornerstone of their investigation, transforming a dead-end cold case into a solvable crime. Finally, for Jolene Cummings, the digital landscape offered not just an archive, but a trail of breadcrumbs. Google Maps and its associated location services, coupled with surveillance footage, became a digital net closing around her killer. It was a testament to how our pervasive digital footprint, often unseen, can leave an undeniable trace. Every ping, every camera capture, every recorded movement became a piece of the puzzle, a digital string of evidence that would lead investigators not just to a suspect, but to a motive and a method. Decades of silence are not simply a lack of information. They are a state of psychological purgatory. The human angle of a cold case, especially a disappearance, is defined by what clinicians call ambiguous loss. The families know their loved one is gone, but without a body, without a definitive end, they cannot fully grieve. They remain perpetually suspended between hope and despair. For the Molt family, 22 years passed. Holidays came and went. Life continued, but a piece of their history was missing. The search had ended, but the waiting never did. Every unexplained moment became a possibility. Every phone call a burst of manufactured hope. The fact that William Molt's final resting place was just yards from his last known destination was a cruel irony the landscape had concealed. When the call came in 2019, triggered by a civilian browsing Google Earth, the reaction was complex. It was not joy, it was relief. The agony of the not knowing finally ended. The search for William Molt was over. The definitive, verifiable image from the sky gave them permission to bury him, to close the chapter that time had frozen shut. Davy Lee Niles' case carried the additional weight of possible self-harm. His family, dealing with their own grief, had to wrestle with that terrible possibility for 9 years. They held a funeral without him. The discovery, in a pond they'd never thought to check, visible from the road but hidden by the trees, was surprised, shocking. It confirmed their worst fears, but it also confirmed the facts. They could bring Davy home and finally say goodbye, not to a memory, but to a physical certainty. These discoveries validated the painful truth the families had carried for so long. The investigation into the disappearance of Jolene Cummings was a relentless digital hunt. The Nassau County Sheriff's Office realized quickly that Kimberly Kessler, the woman who used dozens of aliases, had a ghost identity, but she did not have a ghost life. Every action she took left a digital trace. The digital map became the hunter's primary weapon. The initial surveillance footage provided the who and the what, but the digital terrain provided the where and the when. Investigators used cell tower pings to track the movements of Kessler's own vehicle, her black Kia Soul, in the hours immediately following the crime. These pings, logged by service providers, placed her phone at specific locations with tight time windows. Crucially, these pings showed a lengthy excursion to a remote, desolate area near the State Road 200/I-95 interchange in Yulee. This digital breadcrumb was corroborated with high-resolution satellite imagery from Google Earth. Investigators studied the images, looking for any sign of ground disturbance, any anomalous activity that matched the cell data. The images showed a faint but discernible area of disturbed earth in the remote patch of woods, a fresh dig site. The combination of cell data and satellite surveillance created an undeniable case for a single, critical trip to that precise location. It was the digital blueprint of a cover-up. Guided by this digital certainty, investigators moved in. They found a freshly dug, deep hole. Though Jolene Cummings' remains were not intact, forensic evidence recovered from the site, combined with the DNA evidence from the salon, was irrefutable. The invisible map had cornered the hunter. The images showed a faint but discernible area of disturbed earth in the remote patch of woods, a fresh dig site. The combination of cell data and satellite surveillance created an undeniable case for a single, critical trip to that precise location. It was the digital blueprint of a cover-up. Guided by this digital certainty, investigators moved in. They found a freshly dug, deep hole. Though Jolene Cummings' remains were not intact, forensic evidence recovered from the site, combined with the DNA evidence from the salon, was irrefutable. The invisible map had cornered the hunter. The image captured in October 2012 was a moment of dialogue between two men. The suspect, later identified as Sergio Scopesi, stands clearly next to Ferval. A crucial detail: Scopesi appears to be concealing a club-like object behind his back. The picture provided time, place, participants, and motive context. It was more than surveillance. It was direct evidence of pre-homicide intent. The legal challenge was straightforward. Could a picture taken by a private entity with no specific law enforcement purpose be admissible as the primary evidence of guilt? The answer, in the Italian courts, was an emphatic yes. The photograph possessed perfect neutrality. It could not be cross-examined, could not forget, and had no motive to lie. It was an objective archive of reality. The discoveries also created profound forensic challenges. For Molt and Niles, the water had preserved the vehicle structure but degraded the organic material. Identifying the remains was done through dental records, which the digital image of the car only made possible by telling the police where to look. The cause of death, even after recovery, was often ruled an accident or undetermined due to the difficulty of discerning pre-mortem injury after years of aquatic decomposition. In Ferval's case, the decomposition was terrestrial and rapid, but the street view image, by providing a precise month for the event, allowed forensic experts to corroborate the state of the body upon discovery with the known variables of the local climate. The digital capture provided the timeline. The forensic science provided the confirmation. In all four cases, the technology was the indispensable catalyst, shifting the investigation from hopeless searching to verifiable fact. The stage was now set for the final definitive conclusions. The climax of a cold case is often a rush of adrenaline, a siren, a door kicked in. But the turning point for William Molt arrived with a click. It happened on a suburban street in Palm Beach County, Florida, 22 years after he vanished. It was August 28, 2019. A former resident of the Grand Isles community, Barry Fay, was simply using Google Earth to browse his old neighborhood. He zoomed in on the retention pond behind a neighbor's house. He wasn't looking for treasure. He was looking for nostalgia. But then, he saw it. A faint shape in the lower quadrant of the pond. It was submerged deep enough to be missed from the bank, but shallow enough to register on the high-resolution satellite camera. A distinct, white, rectangular shape. It was angled toward the deep center of the basin. It looked like a car. The image wasn't new. It had been on the map, untouched for over a decade. The cold truth of William Molt's fate had been archived and publicly available since at least 2007, a ghost frozen in the digital ether. It only needed the correct perspective. Barry Fay contacted the current resident of the home adjacent to the pond.
The homeowner launched a personal drone over the water.
The drone footage confirmed Fay's digital observation. The object was unmistakably a vehicle. A 911 call was made to the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. The missing persons case from 1997 was about to intersect with the technology of the 21st century. Deputies arrived at the scene. The retrieval operation was methodical. A heavy-duty tow truck was brought in. For 22 years, the water had held its secret, aided by the dense calcification that had accumulated on the vehicle. Slowly, agonizingly, the car was pulled from the opaque water. Deputies arrived at the scene. The retrieval operation was methodical. A heavy-duty tow truck was brought in. For 22 years, the water had held its secret, aided by the dense calcification that had accumulated on the vehicle. Slowly, agonizingly, the car was pulled from the opaque water. The remains were taken to the medical examiner. The identification was swift and positive, confirmed through dental records. The official ruling: an accidental drowning. The theory established was that Molt, possibly disoriented in the dark and unfamiliar construction site of 1997, had accidentally driven down the unlit embankment and into the retention pond. The sloping earth had allowed the car to slide silently, unseen into the water, where it remained for over 2 decades. The silent digital witness had delivered the final, definitive answer. A similar, almost identical sequence of events unfolded 1,000 miles away, providing closure for the family of Davy Lee Niles. But here, the irony was even more profound. The body of the missing man was located directly across the street from the one place dedicated to honoring the deceased. 9 years after Davy Lee Niles disappeared, in November 2015, another ordinary citizen used a digital map to satisfy a simple curiosity. Brian Houseman, working nearby, had occasionally driven by the pond. He'd also heard the long-ago stories of the missing man. While reviewing the area on Google Earth, he focused on the stretch of woods and water. Like Barry Fay, Houseman saw the outline, a faint geometric structure in the shallow, murky water just off the edge of the parking lot. The image of a car, upside down, partially submerged. He called the Kent County Sheriff's Office. The response was immediate. Dive teams were dispatched to the small pond near 84th Street. The divers quickly located a car. It was submerged in 5 to 8 feet of water, upside down, buried slightly in the silty bottom. Crucially, the tree line along the bank had provided a natural visual shield from the road. The car was hidden from the ground but perfectly visible from the sky. The vehicle was recovered. It was a light brown Saturn, matching the description of Davy Lee Niles' car. Inside the vehicle, investigators found human remains and a wallet containing Davy Lee Niles' identification card. 9 years of doubt replaced by an instant of cold, hard certainty. Narrator: thoughtful. The car had been in the pond, visible on Google Earth's satellite view since at least 2010, 5 years before the actual discovery. For half a decade, the answer to the family's agonizing question had been a set of pixels on a map. A silent truth, waiting for the right pair of eyes to zoom in. The digital technology had given 2 families the one thing they could never buy, the one thing they couldn't search for themselves: peace. The discoveries of William Molt and Davy Lee Niles were breakthroughs of passive surveillance. The map solved a problem of finding what was lost. The remaining 2 cases, however, demanded something more aggressive. Here, the digital record was used not to find a ghost but to trap a predator. The silent archive was about to become the star witness in a murder trial. The investigation into the murder of Jolene Cummings was a race against time and a contest of concealment. Kimberly Kessler, the prime suspect, was an expert at disappearing. She had lived a life of deliberate anonymity, but in the age of constant digital tracking, a ghost can still leave a shadow. Nassau County investigators quickly established Kessler's initial movements, ditching Jolene's vehicle, and then driving away in her own black Kia Soul. The crucial defining phase of the climax centered on the path of that Kia. They seized her cell phone records, an avalanche of digital data. The records showed more than just calls. They provided a verifiable log of cell tower pings. Every time her phone connected, it created a geographical point in time. Investigators built a precise hour-by-hour timeline of her movements on the day of the murder. This map revealed an anomalous trip. The phone's signal led her car deep into a wooded, desolate part of Yulee, far from any established road or community. The pings lasted for a significant period of time, long enough for a terrible task to be completed. The digital trail placed the killer at the exact location where the victim was hidden. To corroborate the cell data, investigators turned to the unblinking eye of the satellite. They cross-referenced the coordinates and the timestamp with the most recent Google Earth and other aerial imagery available. In one specific, high-resolution frame of that remote location, they saw it. A patch of earth disturbed, a section of foliage unnaturally thin. It was the digital confirmation of a fresh grave. The digital intelligence provided the undeniable probable cause. Kimberly Kessler was arrested shortly thereafter. Police executed a search warrant on the GPS coordinates derived from the satellite data. They followed the path marked by the killer's cell phone and verified by the camera in the sky. They found a deep, narrow hole, a makeshift grave, and recovered the remains of Jolene Cummings. The physical evidence, including a shovel found in Kessler's storage unit, perfectly aligned with the digital map. The technology had tracked the killer's journey, exposed the act of concealment, and provided the exact address of the truth. It was a digital entrapment. The final turning point came to Italian investigators not through hours of digital surveillance, but through a single, accidental photograph. The murder of Davide Fervala was stalled by the silence of the country lane where his body was found. The breakthrough began with an anonymous tip directed toward the Carabinieri. The caller suggested that the key to the Fervali murder might be found not in the evidence file, but in Google Street View. It was an audacious, almost unbelievable claim, but the investigators followed the digital breadcrumb. They navigated to the specific country lane. They clicked through the panoramic views captured months before the body was found. The image was dated October 2012, and then they froze the frame. It was a moment suspended in time. On the side of the remote road, two men were engaged in conversation. One was Davide Fervale, recognizable and alive. Standing next to him was a man later identified as Sergio Scopesi, Fervale's business associate and later his convicted killer. The power of the image was in the detail. Scopesi was captured in a tense posture and partially obscured by his body, held casually but with lethal intent, was a long, blunt object, believed to be the weapon used to initially subdue Fervale before he was shot. The nine-eyed camera of the Street View car had driven past, completely unconcerned, capturing a high-definition image of a murder in the moments before it was executed. This single, objective photograph was the definitive witness. It placed the victim and the killer together at the scene, establishing the timeline and the context of their final moments. It instantly transformed the murder of Davide Fervale from a forgotten, cold case into a provable crime. Scopesi was identified, located, and swiftly arrested. He was confronted with the image, a piece of irrefutable, uncross-examinable evidence from the silent eye of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. The camera had been the only witness, capturing a secret that the lonely fields of Puglia were meant to keep forever. The turning points were complete. 4 cold cases, 4 undeniable answers. The consequences were about to unfold in the silent theaters of the courtroom. The end of a cold case, even one that yields tragedy, brings a different kind of peace. For the families of William Moult and Davy Lee Niles, the aftermath was defined by the transition from endless searching to defined, factual resolution. The answers, however grim, allowed the process of grief to finally begin.
In Wellington, Florida, the case of William Moult was officially closed by the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office in the fall of 2019. The medical examiner's final determination was the identification of the remains via dental records and the classification of the death as an accidental drowning. Narrator, V. The timeline was reconstructed. In the dark, unfamiliar construction landscape of 1997, Moult likely missed a turn on a newly laid or temporary road, drove down the steep embankment, and slid into the retention pond. The quiet, isolated nature of the spot, coupled with the turbid water, ensured the vehicle remained hidden from view for over 2 decades. The narrative of Moult's discovery captivated the world. It was a story tailor-made for the digital age. A civilian, using a ubiquitous online tool, solving a 2-decade-old mystery that professional police work had been unable to crack. It became a powerful, almost philosophical demonstration of technology as a passive, all-seeing archivist. Narrator, V. Thoughtful. For the Moult family, the immediate consequence was a final resting place. The long, corrosive wait for knowledge was over. The physical recovery of the vehicle and the remains transformed the missing persons file from a perpetual question mark into a completed sentence. The narrative of Moult's discovery captivated the world. It was a story tailor-made for the digital age. A civilian, using a ubiquitous online tool, solving a 2-decade-old mystery that professional police work had been unable to crack. It became a powerful, almost philosophical demonstration of technology as a passive, all-seeing archivist. Narrator, V. Thoughtful. For the Moult family, the immediate consequence was a final resting place. The long, corrosive wait for knowledge was over. The physical recovery of the vehicle and the remains transformed the missing persons file from a perpetual question mark into a completed sentence. The Kent County Sheriff's Office confirmed the remains were Niles. The investigation concluded that he had likely been driving a forklift to cut down a tree when he accidentally drove into the pond. However, due to his documented struggles with cancer and depression, the full context of his actions remained difficult to discern. The case was closed as a solved missing persons file, providing certainty where there had only been speculation. The true consequence for the public lay in the revelation that Niles's vehicle had been visible on Google Earth since 2010. This fact sparked a national debate about the limits of human perception. For 5 years, the answer had been a few clicks away, an artifact of digital mapping that was repeatedly missed by search parties, residents, and even the staff of the funeral home across the road. The physical closure allowed the Niles family to move beyond the ambiguous loss that had defined their lives for nearly a decade. They were finally able to conduct a burial service with their loved one present, ending the painful cycle of searching and waiting. The discovery demonstrated that even the most meticulous human searches can be incomplete, and that the modern, digitized world archives our secrets with a diligence no living witness can match. Narrator, V.O. While the Moult and Niles cases concluded with the somber finality of accidental death, the outcomes for the remaining 2 cases demanded the full process of the criminal justice system. The map's role now pivoted from silent discoverer to irrefutable prosecution witness. The arrest of Kimberly Kessler was the beginning of a long legal battle. In the courtroom, the state of Florida built a case not only on physical evidence but on an irrefutable digital chronology. The evidence gathered from the digital map became essential to establishing the killer's timeline and dismantling her attempts at a cover-up. The prosecution presented the digital trail as proof of premeditation. The cell phone pings tracking Kessler's black Kia to the remote Yulee Woods, corroborated by the satellite image showing the freshly disturbed earth, established the corpus delicti, the facts necessary to prove a crime. The map wasn't just evidence, it was the story of the murder, told objectively and without emotion. Narrator,
VO. Thoughtful. Faced with the undeniable accuracy of the digital evidence, the defense struggled. The court ultimately accepted the combined geospatial data, the pings and the imagery, as concrete proof of the killer's actions immediately following the murder of Jolene Cummings. In December 2021, Kimberly Kessler, who had lived under the alias Jennifer Seibert, was found guilty of first-degree murder. Her sentence was immediate: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The digital age had exposed a woman who thought she could erase her identity and her crime. For Jolene's family, the verdict offered justice, sealed by the meticulous records of the technology used to track the very car that carried the victim's body. The murder trial of Sergio Scopesi in Italy presented an even more dramatic legal confrontation. The case against him relied on minimal physical evidence from the remote scene. The star witness, the single piece of evidence that defined the outcome, was an image taken by a passing car with an unblinking camera. The prosecution argued that the street view image was a perfect, time-stamped record of the critical moments preceding David Fervali's death. It captured the two men together, seemingly mid-conversation, with the killer concealing the weapon. It was an objective, verifiable reality that placed Scopesi at the scene and established opportunity and context. The defense attempted to dismiss the image as circumstantial, arguing for the possibility of coincidence or misinterpretation. But the judge and jury were swayed by the image's inherent objectivity. Unlike a human witness, the camera was not subject to memory lapse, malice, or fear. It simply recorded the geometry of the moment. Sergio Scopesi was found guilty of the murder of Davide Fervale. He received a lengthy prison sentence. The outcome sent a clear message through the Italian and international legal systems. Geospatial data, even that gathered inadvertently by private entities, holds immense prosecutorial power. The Fervale verdict established a critical legal precedent. The archive of the modern, mapped world can be subpoenaed and used to convict. The convenience of a digital map had, in a fleeting, accidental moment, ensured justice. 4 cases, decades apart, different continents, different crimes, yet all were solved by the same impartial, automated, and ubiquitous technology. The secrets the earth held, the secrets the criminals tried to bury, were all laid bare by a silent, unblinking eye in the sky. It begs the final question: in a world where everything is mapped, archived, and recorded, can any secret truly remain hidden? In the end, these are 4 stories of geography, time, and human endeavor. They span continents and decades, but their solutions are rooted in a common, almost impossible fact: that the most powerful witness to these secrets was not a person, but an impartial algorithm. The discoveries of William Moult and Davy Lee Niles offered a somber kind of closure. They teach us that even in the most mundane, overlooked corners of the landscape, secrets can be preserved. Their resting places were not found by dedicated human searching, but by the archival persistence of a machine that simply recorded what it saw. They were 2 men who had driven into the darkness, only to be found by a camera in the sky. The subsequent convictions of Kimberly Kessler and Sergio Scopesi reveal the darker duality of this technology. Here, the map became a tool of accountability. It exposed the killer who thought distance and decomposition would grant her freedom. It captured the pre-crime moment of a secluded homicide, providing the unassailable evidence that shattered a defense. The paradox of the modern cold case is now defined by the existence of this digital archive. No longer does a trail simply go cold. It simply transitions to a different medium, frozen in a layer of satellite imagery, waiting for the right pair of eyes, the eyes of a curious former resident, a concerned local, or a sharp-witted investigator to scroll through time. This phenomenon forces a profound reflection on the nature of privacy versus justice. The very tools we use for convenience, for navigation, and for commerce are unintentionally building a perfect, permanent record of our reality. They are recording the hidden lives of the innocent and the secretive actions of the guilty. The cold case investigator is no longer limited by memory or lack of visibility. They are armed with an omniscient, non-judgmental witness that circles the globe 24 hours a day. The question is no longer if the truth was recorded. The question is only when we will find the time and summon the will to look. These 4 cases confirm a new reality. The physical world is now contained within the digital one. The secrets we keep hidden from our neighbors and from the police can no longer escape the gaze of a satellite or the lens of a car driving methodically down a quiet country road. The digital age has declared that, for a secret to be kept, it must now be hidden not just from humanity, but from the unblinking eye of the world's most comprehensive map. And in the silent hum of the servers, the frozen moments wait. The ghosts of the past are now archived, and justice, it seems, can always find its way home.